Hello, and welcome to this Nigel Frank event titled Hiring Azure Staff, what thousands of professionals are telling us that will improve your acquisition and retention. My name is Will White, Vice President here at Nigel Frank. Every year, we survey thousands of professionals at all levels across the Azure ecosystem to find out what makes them tick and keep our finger firmly on the pulse of, in terms of the market trends. It is the most comprehensive independent study of Microsoft professionals anywhere in the world. And while this puts us in a great position to advise Azure professionals on what they need to be doing to stand out from their peers, it also offers leaders a fascinating glimpse into how organizations can best handle the talent that they have, as well as make you attractive as a potential employer. This webinar will go through some of the key takeaways from this year's survey and what that means for you as you look to become more effective when it comes to cloud recruitment. So just to give you a quick rundown of today's events, I'll give you an introduction to myself and my co-host, followed by an overview of Nigel Frank and who we are. We will then go into a little bit more detail on the salary survey itself, how we collect the data, and why it's such a valuable tool for you as a business and how it can inform a lot of your hiring decisions before going through some of the statistics and results with you and how that can give you an edge when it comes to recruiting and retaining Azure professionals. There'll then be a question and answer session. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please add them into the chat box and we'll be happy to answer all of those at the end. So first off, a little about myself. I've worked in the recruitment industry for the last 10 years. I hold an MBA from Clemson University and also have an AZ900 Azure certification from Microsoft. I currently lead the Microsoft Cloud team here at Nigel Frank for the whole of the US.
So my name is Owen Mitchell and I'm a business manager here at Nigel Frank in the UK. I cover permanent recruitment of Azure professionals, particularly within data and infrastructure, as well as the Power Platform. I've recruited for these technologies for the last 5 years, so I've seen the market grow and change quite a lot in this time. And I currently hold my fundamental certifications in Azure Data and Power Platform, so I'm hoping to add Azure Fundamentals next.
And now I'm sure if you've managed to find this webinar, you probably already know about us, but for those who don't, here's a quick overview as to who Nigel Frank are and what we do. So firstly, we are a dedicated Microsoft recruitment company. We don't work with any other technology. This is all we do. Day in and day out, we work solely recruiting Microsoft professionals. We live and breathe in the ecosystem, and we understand it better than any other recruiter in the planet. Since 2006, we've placed over 12,500 Microsoft professionals across thousands of organizations. So no matter what sector you're in, what size organization you have, we have experience with your situation and can help you with the right talent. From SME to enterprise customers to ISVs and partners, we know how the marketplace works and we know it better than anyone. We have more than 500 consultants working across the globe, working only with Microsoft Azure. That's more than 10 times the size of our nearest competitor. We have 19 offices across 9 countries on 4 different continents. So we don't just know the market, we're a global operation. That reach has resulted in us having the largest database of Microsoft professionals in the world with over 120,000 candidates. Not only that, but our website receives more than 350,000 visits each month from job seekers. We advertise more Azure roles across more channels than any other agency, giving your job and your business maximum exposure. In short, we're pretty well placed to advise on the job marketplace when it comes to Azure. So what is the Azure Salary Survey? As I mentioned earlier, it's the largest independent survey of Microsoft professionals anywhere on the planet. This is the second year that we've surveyed people specifically working within the Azure ecosystem of all levels to gauge their thoughts and feelings on a number of issues that affect them, that motivate and demotivate them, as well as taking salary information so that we can get the most accurate picture of what people working with Azure around the world are earning and should be earning. In total, we analyzed over 129,000 data points to be able to present this to you. So it's not just something we hastily put together. this is an industry-leading resource based on the responses of those that are on the front line. With this, it's really useful information for candidates to determine their worth and see where they can look to improve when entering the job market. And for employers, it's priceless. It gives an unrivaled insight when it comes to salary benchmarking, but it also provides a really clear view of what you can be doing better in order not to just attract talent into your organization, but also to retain it. It also contains input from Microsoft MVPs and other platform experts, making it an incredible resource for anyone that works with Microsoft Azure. This is a completely free of charge publication, and it's not just our thoughts or our speculations into the ecosystem. It's a statistical analysis on the platform and those that are working in it. So it's the best resource we could use to bring you the information that we're about to share with you. So with that in mind, here are some of the key findings that we've discovered that will affect you when it comes to hiring staff or looking to improve your retention. So now I'm going to hand it off to Owen.
Perhaps most importantly, let's start off by looking at job satisfaction. What makes Azure professionals happy or unhappy with their employers? Perhaps the standout thing is that only 65% of people told us that actually, overall, they were satisfied with their job. While we think scores for things such as work-life balance could be higher, I think the likelihood is that as we approach the new normal, that will be addressed quite organically, and those figures will rise and perhaps help to improve overall job satisfaction. When your work-life balance is more in check and you're less stressed, work becomes less of a trigger point. And so what that means when is areas such as training and development, which score much lower, alongside career progression, become huge win areas where you can turn demotivated staff who might be looking at opportunities elsewhere into employees who are looking to develop and improve, and in turn, perhaps have an eye on developing and being worthy of career progression. And most importantly, that progression is with you. The professionals that we work with tend to be quite motivated people with genuine passion for the platform. If you consider that most of them have studied a STEM subject at university before then specializing in Azure after that, these are people who have a genuine interest and thirst to increase their knowledge. They want to get their fingernails dirty, try new things, and get really mastering each new product, update, upgrade available. You know, this knowledge doesn't just benefit them either. So facilitating this learning and development means you have a better standard of professional on your books. Now, paying for certifications is one of the best ways of doing this. So half of employers covered the cost of certifications for their employees last year, with another 15% contributing towards some of the cost of them. Now, if you're not making any contribution towards employee certifications, then you're in the minority, and it's a big source of dissatisfaction. If you're not in a position to contribute, allowing time for your team to study during their working hours is one way of helping to bridge this. But what's certain is if you don't encourage and facilitate learning, people will become demotivated. And teams with that fractious attitude either struggle to produce results or seek the exit, and neither are good for your organization. If you do pay towards certifications already, be aware that it can be a big selling point for a candidate during the interview process, because there's a lot of employers that don't contribute towards the cost at all. It might not be the main headline, but be aware that it is an attractive point of your overall package. And again, in terms of retention, giving employees a clear pathway and vision for their development keeps them with you longer. If they're looking at the next certification or product that they can be working with, they aren't really looking at the exit. If their eyes are ahead rather than on the door, you're winning. As the last year is likely to see the areas around work-life balance that include hours worked, location, and office environment become less of an issue, it's only going to make those things at the bottom of the list stand out more, because flexible working and working from home won't change the way an employee views their progression opportunities or the way that you support their training and development. And if you're interested in specific certifications that people are studying for, they're covered in the survey itself much more in detail, including the impact they'll have on the salary. For instance, only 42% of those who pass certifications noticed a direct increase in their salary afterwards. In fact, as certifications play such a huge part of the Azure landscape, let's look at them in a little more detail. So let's take a quick look first at why people are getting certifications and the difference they make. So for candidates, one of the biggest attractions is that they believe certifications make them more marketable as a candidate. While that might not seem initially appealing for you as the employer, that doesn't immediately mean that it makes them more likely to leave you. The reality is that somebody that is deep in that certification process is somebody ambitious and looking at future-proofing their career so that they have a long career within Azure or whatever comes next. They aren't just making themselves marketable to other employers, they're making themselves marketable to you. They're increasing their skill set so that they bring more value to organizations in the long term. They can market that skill set to you in terms of pay or career progression, while you get the benefit of added products or skill sets that the candidate is available to work with. And it's also a verifiable way for a candidate to prove themselves in terms of competency. So if someone is certified, you know they aren't just saying they're able to do something, that they can't do it to a certain level. They either can or can't do what they say they do. So it's a fantastic way of verifying skill sets, both for candidates and for employers alike. That's why it's so important that you play your part as a business that hires Azure professionals in contributing to the development of those working on it. When everyone is helping professionals to develop, you're making the ecosystem a better place, and also helping make sure that there's more certified professionals reduces your risk when it comes to making your next hire if more professionals are certified. So with certifications, let's take a look quickly at the financials behind the certification process. 60% of Azure professionals are already certified, and with the last 12 months being the perfect opportunity to spend more time at home studying, we expect that figure to really increase. I think there's two main things that are interesting here. So first is that only half of respondents had their certifications paid in full by their employer. So contributing in full towards the cost of education for your staff is going to put you in the top half of employers, which is a really simple way to increase your chances of landing the professionals you want. And in terms of retaining talented Azure staff, if half of potential employers trying to poach your staff aren't paying for certifications, your odds of keeping people within your organization is increased immeasurably. Now, if you aren't in a position to fully pay for certifications, I think the other positive is that a third of professionals have paid for their own study off their own back. It's an incredibly desirable trait that people are willing to invest in their own development, which is fantastic if you're in a position to fully fund their further certifications. However, if you're on a limited budget but can contribute in some way towards their study, that's a really sizable pool of candidates that you could attract just by easing some of the financial burden they've encountered by trying to further themselves. So I think looking at ways that you can contribute towards that study really increases your odds, whether slightly or considerably. And ultimately, every small percentage you can increase your odds by adds up another better overall chance. That's one piece of advice I'd really give to you when it comes to attracting talent. There aren't any shortcuts or magic wand type solutions, but there are lots of small things you can do that your peers simply aren't. Again, for example, less than half of all respondents received a pay rise after gaining a certification. So it isn't necessarily about throwing money at people. Yes, there's no doubting that a salary increase to reflect increased knowledge will put you in a better position to retain staff, because we all want to feel valued in our work. But in terms of certification, you're increasing your employees' skill sets, which they'll be able to use to benefit you. And also you'll be aware that really good techies, the sort of people you want in your building, are the ones that constantly need stimulation, that want to be getting their hands dirty with updates and products, and giving them room to do that with certifications is a great way to really keep great professionals engaged. So why are people leaving you? If you take out the financial option, which, to be honest, is why 99% of also here primarily, I think this is really telling snapshot of the Azure ecosystem in terms of being full of really hungry, passionate professionals who want to develop and want to improve, who have all the soft skills that you really desire when putting teams together. People want to be challenged, want the company to have a strategy and one that they can see themselves being part of, want to work with the latest products. And any company offering that is one that, generally speaking, has a strong culture and working environment. Now, obviously, this is much more complex one to give an easy answer to, but look at how you reward and progress high performers and make sure that there's a clear route of development. It's such a simple thing to overlook, but make sure you have regular one-to-ones with people to find out how they're developing, how they want to develop, and ask how you can support them. Let them know that you're invested in them. You don't have to be a psychic to try and figure out what's going on beneath the surface. An employee in the right sort of working environment should feel comfortable talking to you about where they see themselves progressing, and the self-fulfilling answer in some senses. And although an office location might be a difficult one to create a specific fix for, if you think in terms of offering remote work figures right next to it, then you sort of have a potential answer. Particularly now we've seen how effective virtual teams can work in the real world. One thing we've found is that as companies shift their remote working policies now, is that candidates are willing to make longer commutes if it's only once or twice a week. In that sense, it's definitely worth looking at the benefits you offer, which we'll move on to now. And I'm also aware that despite all of this, some of you will be still looking at the number one answer of higher salary and being a bit panicky. So with that in mind, I do have some reassuring news, which is what happened when we asked those who weren't currently employed what they were looking for from their next job. So as you can see here, the remuneration on offer ranks much lower down the list of priorities if somebody isn't already employed. Obviously, in the current climate, people want somewhere that feels secure, but their goals are definitely more focused on a human element. So what progression opportunities are there? What will they be actually contributing? What are the company's core values? It's something we see so much of within Azure, particularly in the younger generation coming through. People don't simply want to clock in and clock out. They're invested in what they do and want to feel like they're making a tangible contribution. So when you're hiring, don't just look to the position that person be filling. Make sure there's an opportunity for them to grow with you and the difference they'll be making to your organization, the market, the projects they'll be working on too. So don't just talk about the tech requirements for the role, but talk about the impact that this will have on your organization. The pain point it fixes, how it can help you, importantly, what's next? If you're hiring somebody and selling them a long-term version of what they'll be doing, then you're automatically setting expectations of the time frame they subconsciously expect to be with you and the things they can envisage themselves while achieving while there. And while I think the next slide is probably a subject to a lot of movement as the answers we're taking pre-pandemic, I think it's worth us quickly looking at the responses to what makes people consider moving from contract work to permanent employment, which 52% of respondents said they'd consider even before COVID-19. One trend we're seeing at the moment is that a lot of contractors are looking for something more stable at the moment. So there's never been a better chance to appeal to that pool of talent. Plus, regardless of the talent pool itself, it's also further evidence of the kind of things that will attract a candidate to your organization. So understandably, for those who work as contractors, remuneration was the key factor here. But the rest of this list is really interesting finding. Firstly, that job security and a stable income feature in the top 10 reasons a contractor would consider a move to permanent employment, which will understandably be even more of an attractive position in the current climate. But beyond that, look at the list of what a contractor one from you, and it adds further weight to what you need to offer to get edge on your peers. Career progression, visibility that the work they're doing makes a difference, generous benefits package, which, as we'll see, doesn't always come down to finances. Now, there's no getting away from some of your hiring and acquisition being down to investment, but a little thinking outside the box can truly give you an edge. Contractors aren't just working freelance because of financial gain. A lot of them are doing it because they're highly motivated with a fantastic skill set, and tapping into that could give you access to an amazing pool of talent. Again, this is as much about selling your project to candidates as much as it is simply offering as much money as you can. If you're selling the vacancy purely on the package and the project, then the people joining you will only ever see it as a job. When that's the level of investment they have in you, then the moment you're outbid, they'll leave you. When they're investing in your business and what you want to achieve, that's not only incredibly attractive to join, but also keeps people's eyes looking forward. You'll notice also that benefits score highly, so we'll now take a look at the benefits across the Azure ecosystem. So we'll begin with what Azure professionals already tend to receive. It's a good starting point of what employers tend to offer compared to what employees actually want. Offering these things aren't necessarily going to make you stand out, but you will if you aren't offering them, and not in a good way either. So even before the pandemic started, home working and flexible hours was something that companies were generally offering to ensure a better work-life balance for Azure professionals. However, for those that haven't offered it before, it's becoming more and more important to us all. And in light of the recent taste that we've had of more flexible working arrangements, that's only going to increase even further. That's not to say that every employee wants it. We've all coped differently being stuck at home, using the kitchen as an office, working with our families present, combining our day jobs with being caregivers and teachers. But as life goes back to normal, many people don't want to go back to the commute. They value the time that they've had working from home, and it allows them to spend with the family. For many more, it'll be a hybrid of the two. So we'll look at how remote working has traditionally been managed pre-COVID in a moment. What's clear is that even before the pandemic, talented Azure professionals generally had that flexibility, and now everyone has had a taste of it. The demand for it has become the norm, and that demand is going to increase rather than decrease. If you don't offer it going forward, you're going to be way down the pecking order when it comes to attracting talent. I think this year is going to be incredibly challenging in terms of benefits, as they're going to change massively. So it's really important to keep engaged with your staff in terms of things that they actually want and need. Casual dress policy is a really great, cost-effective win for your tech teams, but if they're working from home most of their week, then it becomes a lot less important. I hate ironing my shirts as much as the next person, but if I'm doing it once a week at most, then it's not as big a deal. Same goes with a casual dress code as it does with things like discounted gyms near your office or free car parking. If your employees aren't on site as often, these become much less of a selling point in the real world. However, we've all spent a year really valuing the extra time to ourselves that comes when you're on commuting. And so time off can be a valuable incentive. Even if it's just shutting down an hour or two early, that can make a huge difference to staff when they're already home. Actually, within Nigel Frank, we introduced Wellbeing Wednesday, where each week we strongly encourage staff to switch the laptops off an hour early and go do something for themselves. In the time I've worked here, it's probably been one of the most popular benefits we've offered staff. Yet in terms, real terms, it costs us nothing. Most people actually work harder to fit their usual workload into that shorter day and benefit from a little bit of extra time with their families. So I think being creative with the benefits you offer is important. Things like streaming subscriptions for services like Netflix or Spotify, things that will keep staff happy at home. I think they'll become more popular over the next 12 months. But as I say, don't be afraid to ask your staff directly what they need or want from you, and try to adapt where you can to match them. there's a preconception that you should be able to second guess your workforce and provide for them instinctively, and it's just not true. If you have a culture where communication is encouraged, then you can ask what people need and work to support that. Culture will help you provide a package for your staff beyond just benefits, and also helps you attract more people into the business and also keeps them there. But in terms of the actual benefits that will attract people to your business, we asked survey respondents as to the benefits that would encourage them to accept a job offer, which I think is important for us to look at. I think it's clear that a lot of what employees want if they're going to change employers revolves around a better life away from work and you being able to facilitate that. So things like home working, time off, flexible hours, and the location are all very important. I think whilst the common benefits will change next time and we survey Azure professionals, this list is very likely to remain the same, especially in light of the last year. Certainly, if you're an employer trying to resist the transition to remote teams, then you're going to not just be in the minority, but you're also going against the second most desired benefit from professionals, which really puts you at a disadvantage. Another thing that's great for you as an employer, and I think that really shows off the strength of the Azure ecosystem, is that while a bonus is the most desired benefit, that's incentivized reward, rather than a 13-month pay or end of year bonus, which actually scores a lot lower. So while the most desired benefit may be monetary, people are telling us that they do want to work hard and achieve things within your organization to receive that. I think that's a fantastic thing here and really encouraging. And like I say, it shows that the Azure talent pool are hungry to deliver success to organizations. It's also worth noting that a bonus doesn't just have to be monetary. There's like gift vouchers, equipment, and even additional time off will all work as a way to both motivate and reward your team. Obviously, there's a lot of detail within here that will affect you as an employer in terms of what you can or can't offer. But it's absolutely worth downloading the survey so that you can look in more detail at things that attract Azure professionals want. And sit down, work out what you're in a position to be able to offer when looking to hire and when figuring out your hiring strategy this year. Now, I'm also aware that a lot of these results revolve around things that home working could fix. And as the world is starting to get to normal, we're all figuring out what our working from home policies will be. For those of you maybe not used to it before the pandemic, let's just have a quick look now at how remote work tended to look in the old normal. Now, I know it can be intimidating trying to get your head around managing a virtual team if you've not done it before from experience. So I've taken the data of how people's working weeks looked prior to last year, which I think is a fairly decent indicator of how things will look as we go back to a sort of hybrid working pattern going forward. Although it might balance a bit more in favor of more remote work than it looks on here. However, the reality of it seems to be that very few Azure teams are made up of teams that are 100% offsite, with the vast majority only working 1 or 2 days a week from home or elsewhere. What that really shows is that if you're new to offering remote work as an option going forward, it doesn't necessarily mean having to learn how to manage a virtual team on a permanent basis and never actually see any of your employees. Many people need the social element that an office environment brings, and having that face-to-face interaction with colleagues, some simply don't have an appropriate setup at home to facilitate full-time working. But having the option to work at least some of your week from home allows for a much better work-life balance, whether that's avoiding a day of commuting, spending a little longer in bed, or even just being able to attend a sports class or do the school run. Having that option is important and can actually have a massive cost implications for your staff that mean they're financially better off than you simply adding X amount onto the salary. And it also doesn't cost you. It's also worth noting that when it comes to working full-time from home, this option is more desirable with women than it is for men, which is something we've seen replicated in other surveys across different technologies. As women tend to be primary caregivers for young children, it makes remote work a vital part of any job package they're offered. What we all know, however, is that the makeup of men compared to women in the industry is still very much skewed towards male. The sector can do better in terms of diversity. What that means in terms of acquisition is that having an employment package on offer that's attractive to women will give you the edge in attracting those applicants. There's a range of things you can do besides that, such as gender neutral wording in your job ads, but offering a working pattern that will allow a parent the chance to combine school runs with a full-time job, for example, will make your organization much more attractive to that demographic. There are almost an infinite number of reasons why somebody may not be able to or want to commute or be in an office situation for 8 or 9 hours a day, but are perfectly capable of carrying out the job to an incredibly high standard. So it might not be high on the list of things that will make somebody want to join you, but it will attract a much wider range of applicants to the role and thus give you access to an untapped pool of talent. It's really one of the great secrets we've discovered when it comes to trying to draw interest beyond the usual resumes. Digging into talent pools that your competitors aren't is one of the easiest ways to give you an advantage when trying to attract talent into your organization. Allowing your employees the flexibility to fit work around life rather than the other way is a surefire way to encourage loyalty too.
So just to quickly recap on a few points that I would say would support your business moving forward. First, one major positive for you as an employer is that we're still in something of a transition phase in terms of the way the new workplace looks. And despite it looking like we're coming out of the other side of this event from last year, even as life gets back to normal, businesses everywhere are trying to adapt and learn lessons. That means that there's goodwill from employees to their employers at the moment. And people understand that as you look to change things for the better, you might not always get it right. But if you're clearly looking to adapt to make life better for those working for you, then they'll show a lot more patience and also remember it in the future. And that's going to drive your retention. People already wanted the option to work from home, and having a taste of that over the last 12 months, a lot of people will not want to go back into the office permanently. Smarter companies aren't just seeing how this all pans out in the long term, they're putting strategies in place now. Not many organizations are in the position to be increasing pay right now, but having flexible working arrangements available will put you in an incredibly strong position. So don't just think about the return to work, but think about that long term and how you can facilitate this change and market it to your staff and your potential recruits now. Second, invest in your training. Whether that's time or money, you need to buy into the importance of your team's professional development and support it. I hope what we've shown you today gives you a snapshot into the sector that is filled with incredibly hungry, ambitious, and knowledgeable individuals. And there's only one way to satisfy that desire. Allowing your teams the room to grow is perhaps the number one way to ensure that you're doing the best to improve your retention. Even if you don't have the budget to facilitate investment in certifications, make sure that you're encouraging development and career progression in other ways. We have an ecosystem full of ambitious and talented professionals, and if you can't provide a career path and opportunities for your staff, then there will be a lot of other employers that are willing to. We've seen huge growth in the Azure platform, and so the demand for talent is becoming more intense. That doesn't just mean finding talent is tough, but retaining it is also a huge challenge. So make sure if you can't pay for certifications that you're giving time for your team to learn and develop and experiment. That time should never be interrupted. Postponing development time is a surefire way of telling your cloud team that development isn't a priority. And lastly, look at how what's on offer might attract different applicants to the role. This year has taught us a great deal in terms of how we can and want to fit work around personal lives and circumstances. offering as much flexibility to accommodate that will put you in such a strong position to attract candidates that simply aren't applying for roles with your competitors. There's almost limitless number of reasons why that might prevent someone from communicating or commuting to an office than spending 40 plus hours a week there and offering more flexible arrangements around that. From the working hours to remote teams, that will give you the edge in appealing to those people. There are so many fantastic talent pools that go largely overlooked. For instance, a mother will traditionally take on the duties around childcare, meaning she can't be in the office after 3 in the afternoon, and thus the quit rate for women in tech is frighteningly high. Introducing flexible hours or the opportunity to work from home will enable a parent to combine childcare with their working day and giving you access to a huge pool of talent that is simply dropping out of the workplace otherwise. If you try and remove the roadblocks that discourage people from different backgrounds from applying to join you, then you'll have access to more job seekers and be in a much stronger position to attract talent overall. So that's all from me today, although I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. Anything I'm unable to answer, I'll be more than happy to connect with you and get back to you with the answer away from this presentation. And my contact details will be displayed in a moment if you wish to connect with me privately. Before we move on to that, I just want to make sure that you are aware the full survey is available completely free of charge from our website. It's nigelfrank.com. It's under market reports in the header there, which I should mention also includes our Azure specific white paper aimed at helping Microsoft business customers to use the platform to help them even further. It's free of charge. It includes a wealth of knowledge and information and expertise from business leaders and platform experts, including a number of Microsoft MVPs. It's a really great resource for this moment in time. And even beyond that, but you'll find our salary survey in this section of the website again. Again, it's completely free of charge to download it, and it goes into much more detail than we've been able to cover during this short presentation. There's a comprehensive city-by-city salary breakdown for various roles across the Azure spectrum, which, beyond the insights I've shared with you, is an invaluable tool when it comes to either salary benchmarking or simply knowing how much you should be offering for the next hire. So before I go, I'm happy to take any questions from people if they have any. If not, then thank you very much for your time today. I hope this has given you some insight in the Azure ecosystem and that the salary survey can help you look towards hiring as well as retaining staff in 2020 and beyond. My contact details are also on the screen, so anybody that would like to connect with me privately can. But are there any questions that you have now?
Let's see. Are we going to share the recording of the meeting after we finish the event? Yes, we are going to share the recording. We'll also provide a copy of the salary survey download link as well too. What do you expect the new normal to look like when it comes to hiring for this technology? Well, I think what we'll probably see is the same thing other businesses are going to see, right? More remote work is the pretty obvious one. The knock-on effect of that's going to be, it's going to be interesting. There's a lot of primary childcare that's being carried out by women. And home working is going to allow for more parents to have a wider choice. So we'll see a real leveling up when it comes to the diversity across gender. The digital skills gap is widening and the industry is desperately needing people. So that might come from people working almost entirely from home. It's almost like a little cottage industry of its own, so to speak.
Yeah, I've had one come through as well, Will, which is how has COVID changed the hiring cycle? Which is essentially that we found that it's much faster now. So it's reduced from an average of 6 weeks down to 4. And that's from a client first registering a job to successfully placing a candidate with them. So around a third reduction in time. Interviews now average 2 stages instead of what we can often find to be 3 in a pre-COVID world. And obviously now can be done by Zoom, Teams, or Chime. So turnaround is much quicker, and that process is easier for all sides generally. 82% of the placements we've made actually in the last quarter have involved no face-to-face interviews at all, which is quite a big increase, but the companies have the confidence in us to manage that process effectively, and they need to access that talent quicker. What you can find as well now is you can hire from a much wider pool of talent now with remote teams. So more than 9 out of 10 clients that we've placed candidates with have told us that the opportunity will be there for them to work remotely 100% of the time for the rest of 2021. So if you need talent quickly, which 68% of our clients have told us they are likely to rehire again within the next 3 months due to increased demand for cloud professionals, then a remote team will give you that opportunity to attract even more applicants, meaning better quality candidates available to you as well. Remote work will allow you to hire from a wider pool in terms of diversity and geographic location, and a higher number of applicants will generally mean higher quality candidates within that. Now, I must also caveat that is lots of candidates who previously weren't able to apply to roles with yourselves before, who maybe are now because you're offering remote roles, may treat this as a little bit of a shop window exercise. So it's important that, for one, you're selling yourselves effectively as a potential employer in interviews, and also testing people on how they would operate in a fully remote role. So how they've been over the last year, what troubles they've had with it, as there may also be a little bit of regret later on, as we have seen on 1 or 2 occasions.
Yeah. I got another one here, Owen. Is there something specific about the ecosystem that attracts candidates to it? I'd have to say we've got folks that are hungry to develop and improve, right? Which is why certifications are so popular within our ecosystem. It's the way to pursue new ideas and learn. So ultimately, we all know cloud is the fastest growing area in technology, and those who are transitioning to it are the sort of people who are ahead of the game, in my opinion, and they want to be in demand, right? So having an ecosystem full of people with that attitude is awesome. It's fantastic. You don't just want people clocking in and clocking out. You want people who can make a difference in your organization and its digital infrastructure. Got another one. Median age of employees who participated in the survey. I don't have an answer to that off the top of my head, but I can come back to you on that one as well too, with some of the demographic pieces as well too. Most of that information is on page 6 of the survey that we'll share after the webinar.
Yes, and just also with that in mind, we've just been asked a question, is that we've provided some answers and split them by sex. So we're able to do them for things such as race, which is we could, but we don't feel that there's actually enough value to be gained from this information. In that the aim of these surveys is to provide the ecosystem with information that can genuinely help with decision making and reflect moods and trends. Besides which, the responses across different races tends to be pretty consistent, whereas the answers between sex can actually differ quite widely and provide insight into what people want depending on personal circumstances. For instance, women want the option to be able to remote work more, but tend to receive it less, which can be a real pain point when it comes to encouraging a better male to female ratio amongst tech teams, which employers can and should be taking advantage of in terms of improving the way they hire and retain staff.
Yeah. let's see here. I think that's all we have right now. So if that's the last question, then that's going to conclude the event for today. So I just want to thank everybody for attending. We've really appreciated it. And I hope everyone stays safe and take care.